Good morning and welcome. Moving on from words to action, let's have a look at the summary of key facts at the end of Q3. As you may note, Q3 2025 was the best quarter ever in our history in terms of revenue and the EBITDA margin. Revenue in the first three quarters of the year increased by more than 30% year-on-year. The EBITDA margin grew by almost one-fourth. And as you may note, we have recently been adjusting our EBITDA margin, and these adjustments relate to M&As. So that was never done before because those costs were not that much of a contributor to the margin. Now it's different, so we've started to adjust the EBITDA margin. And as you can see, the percentage margin before the adjustment falls well within the range under our long-term strategy. And the increase in revenue and the EBITDA margin has taken place under circumstances that were partly unfavorable to our business, with a lot of downturn in the automotive sector, which previously represented a fourth of our revenue, and a negative impact of the FX rates, which continue to fall. This makes our business more difficult. Nonetheless, the company has been growing, and it is still strongly profitable. Another point I'd like to raise, if you compare quarter to quarter, please note that starting this quarter, Codibly is fully included in the comparative base. Last quarter, 5% of revenue growth was attributable to the acquisition of Codibly. Now we no longer report that because Codibly is considered organic growth. Significant new contracts. We have announced two contracts, so let me talk about them briefly. Orlen, a very big contract with a very strong company. Everything is well on track. And a leading financial institution. Our collaboration is growing slowly, as typical with large companies. BBC was like that. But this collaboration is growing. The client is satisfied, and we are optimistic about next year. Our strategy is largely based on the diversification of our business and M&As. In Q3 2025, we had three due diligence processes. One was completed with the acquisition of the US company Carimus. Two other due diligence processes are still underway. In the first three quarters of the year, we served 293 clients. 1,000. Sorry, at the end of the quarter, our employment dropped somewhat due to main two drivers. A smaller bench in Q3, it was only 2%, 1.8 to be exact, whereas last year the bench was much bigger. So although the number of our employees is smaller, this is good. Number two, we are adjusting our capacity to the conditions in the automotive sector. We have been forced to make some tough decisions, especially regarding our team in Romania, but next quarter I'm expecting our headcount to grow. Our offices and the business sectors. No major change there. One important change, something we are very proud of, ad tech, MarTech, the advertisement and marketing technology segment. We have recently set up a new company. It's growing very well. In September, it broke even. It will take some time, however, before it makes a major contribution to our revenue or profits because it's a small entity and our revenue is quite big in size. But this is a good trend, which shows that the investments we are making is profitable and generates a quick return on investment. So we plan to continue with investments. Looking at our peer group, you can see that Spyrosoft fares quite well compared to the peers. Our headcount is growing year to date. Our revenue has grown, and the operating profit has increased. Earnings per share, EPS, dropped somewhat due to several drivers. Tax, Wojtek will take this point, and the unfavorable FX rates. But compared to the peers, we are doing much, much better than the others. And now the financial results. Over to Wojtek. Thank you,
Dziękuję
Konrad.
Konradzie. Jeśli
Our
chodzi o
revenue,
przychody, to tak jak Konrad
Konrad mentioned
wspomniał po pierwszym
when
slajdzie,
discussing slide one,
po pierwszych trzech
in the first
kwartałach
three quarters of
2025
2025, our revenue was 440
440
million,
milionów,
up
wzrost
30,
o 30,
close to
prawie całe
33%.
30%. Jak widać,
Our
spółka
company is
realizuje w całym roku
pursuing its
2025
strategy for
strategię na
2022-2026.
2025-2026. O ławce
Konrad has
Paweł
mentioned the
wspomniał,
bench,
że ona
which is
sukcesywnie
steadily dropping.
spadała
In
i w
Q3
kwartale
alone,
trzecim z,
the
ukształtowała się
bench
na
was
poziomie
1.8%.
1,8%.
This
Tu na tym
slide
slajdzie widzimy
shows
strategię
our
w
strategy
odniesieniu do
for revenue
przychodów.
growth. The
Żółta linia
yellow
pokazuje wzrost o
curve
35% rok do
shows
roku,
year-on-year
czerwona
growth at
20%. Widać, że w
35%
pierwszych
CAGR.
kwartałach
The
jesteśmy
red curve is
pomiędzy
25%
tymi
CAGR. So after the three
liniami,
quarters of the year, we are in
jeżeli chodzi
between
o nasze
these two
przychody
curves.
netto, ale w
Our strategy for
2025
2025 is
zdecydowanie na
not
pewno
at risk. We will
przebijemy
definitely
te nasze,
exceed
tą dolną część.
the lower curve. The
Jeżeli chodzi o
EBITDA,
EBITDA, prezentujemy ją drugi
which
raz
we
już
now present for the second time,
nie tylko w
not only
ujęciu
in nominal
nominalnym,
terms, but also
ale także w
adjusted.
skorygowanym
As
i tak jak
Konrad
Konrad
said,
wspomniał,
we adjust
korelujemy to tylko
the
o
EBITDA
koszty
for
nie,
M&A
które
costs,
znacząco rok do
which
roku pokazały
increased
zwiększenie.
substantially year on year.
O kosztach poniesionych w związku z sytuacją na
Konrad
rynku
mentioned
Konrad
our costs
powiedział,
in relation to the
jeżeli chodzi o
situation in the
o
automotive
ławkę, tak
sector.
samo
He also
jest
mentioned the
także
bench.
korekta
The
zainwestowania
adjustment
powoduje, że jesteśmy też powyżej celu,
puts
co
us
prawda
above
jeszcze
the
nie
strategic
zyskujemy.
targets.
Jak co kwartał
And
pokazujemy
every
wpływ
quarter we present the impact
walut
of the
na
FX rate on our
nasz
business.
biznes, bo jak Państwo wiedzą,
85% of
80%
our
to
revenue
zwyknie w okolicach tego procentu cały
steadily
czas
comes from
gdzieś się
markets
kręcimy, w
outside of
związku związane
Poland,
z walutami
and
też
the three
tutaj
key
widać
currencies are not
zrównoważenie naszego
helping our
biznesowi, ale
business
mimo
at this
tego,
time.
że one, przepraszam bardzo, one są
So this is an
niekorzystne,
unfavorable
spółka radzi sobie
circumstance.
bardzo
Nevertheless,
dobrze.
the company is doing very well.
Jeżeli chodzi o
Net
zysk
profit.
netto, stosujemy już od
For
jakiegoś
quite a while
czasu
now, we
kontrakty
have
typu
been
forward i window
using
forwarda, które pozwalają
forwards and window
prognozować
forwards to
efekt siły
mitigate the
złotówki
effect
o
of the
1 milion
strong
złotych.
zloty by approximately 1 million
Jeżeli
zloty.
chodzi o podatki, o tą część,
Tax
które wpływają na zysk
impacting net
netto,
profit.
to tak jak
As we
widzieliśmy
said,
w czwartym
in
kwartale,
Q4,
będzie
we'll
to
see
też
the
pełny
full picture
obraz, gdyż będziemy
when we
mógł policzyć
can
pełny wpływ
estimate or calculate the full
ulgi
impact of
BRUSL,
the
jeżeli chodzi
R&D
o
tax
polskie
relief
spółki. Na dzień
for the
dzisiejszy
Polish
wiemy tylko
companies. For
podatek
now, we
związany
only see the tax
ze
related
spółkami
to the
zagranicznymi,
foreign
czyli obecnie
companies,
nie mamy takiej
where
możliwości
we cannot
odliczania,
deduct
plus te
R&D
podatki,
expenses,
które
plus the tax we
rozpoznajemy w pierwszych kwartałach
recognized in the
polskich
first three
spółek.
quarters in the Polish companies.
Jeżeli chodzi
The
o rachunek
P&L,
wyników, to widać, że
the
wzrost
growth in
przychodów
revenue
i kosztów
and direct
bezpośrednich
costs
nie wpływa tak bardzo na wzrost kosztów
has
naszego
not
zarządu,
really
czyli
impacted our
wcześniej mieliśmy
costs
sytuację,
of
kiedy
general
poznawaliśmy
management and
Codibri,
sale.
które nie było
Cardibly
opodatkowane te
was
kwartały,
recognized before, which
gdyż
made the quarters
w pierwszym kwartale
incomparable. In
2024 nie było
Q1
Codibri,
2024, we
więc
did not
ten
have
przyrost
Cardibly.
był
Later we did, so the
większy.
increase
Jak
was bigger.
widać teraz,
Now
ten
this
biznes
growth rate
jest
is
zdrowy, jeżeli chodzi w podejście
still robust.
do naszych wzrostów
I'm speaking
przychodów.
of the growth in revenue.
Sebastianie,
Sebastian, over to
przekazujecie
you.
głos.
Thank you. When you look at the revenue by sector, please note two highlights. First, the growing share of revenue in e-mobility and renewables, which is a very positive trend in our case, and we believe this trend will be sustained quarter after quarter. The second point is we see a lot of pressure in the automotive sector, as the previous speakers said. But please note that the other verticals where we operate offset the drop in revenue we've seen in automotive and more. The market where we are present, especially Germany, is under constant pressure. The next slide shows the same breakdown by value in the individual segments. Automotive under pressure, as I said. I'd like to note what we said in the previous meeting. We now have a new segment, chemicals, and some of the contracts from robotics have been moved to chemicals, hence a small drop in robotics. We've made this transition because these contracts are in fact delivered to clients in the chemical sector. The revenue mix, no major change. The biggest market is still the UK, followed by DAC, Poland, the US. However, we expect and we are sure that this is going to happen following the acquisition of Caramus, which exclusively works in the US market. We believe that this percentage will be much bigger next year. Speaking of the prospects, the outlook for the upcoming quarters, these remain stable. We see no major, no fireworks really, because the markets where we are present are good and strong. Let me, however, comment on Caramus. This acquisition is closely linked to the strategy we have been pursuing and discussing for quite some time. We are growing our presence in the US market, and that is why we have acquired Caramus. We expect that Caramus's revenue this year will be above $6 million compared to 5.3 in 2024. We mainly provide services to healthcare, biotechnology, energy and infrastructure clients. But we want to grow our headcount in the US. Now that we have a company which has an operational footprint in the market, this will be possible. The US market has a huge potential, especially in AI, and we definitely want to tap that potential in the services we offer to our clients. Konrad has mentioned diversification. Diversification, diversification, diversification. We have recently set up some new companies, Spyrosoft Innovo, which operates in the agricultural sector, and Spyrosoft AdTech, which broke even or will break even in Q4, which will not have a big impact on the group's revenue. However, the trend is definitely upward. We continue our M&A activity, as we've heard. Two due diligence processes are underway for an Asian and a German company. Something we mentioned at the last meeting, we have taken steps to enter the Gulf market in the future because our presence there, well, we already have a local presence of sorts, but it's not fully satisfying. AI, I will repeat myself, 4% of the group's revenue is generated by AI-related services. This market continues to grow strongly. As I said, Caramus opens the door for us to hire more experts in the US market to work with AI. We are implementing AI internally wherever we can to optimize our processes and costs, so our cost base remains limited. On the other hand, we have AI across most of the projects we offer to
udostępniamy
our
tym
customers.
klientom. Jeżeli
Regarding our
chodzi o
strategic review,
naszą
we want to
strategię
complete the
zapewnienia
process by the end of this
bezpieczeństwa
year.
cyfrowego roku. W
And
kontekście
regarding long-term,
strategii
or the
Wojtek
long-term
poinformował,
strategy,
że podtrzymuje
we have
pozytywne
maintained our targets.
wzrost
As
opodatkowania
Wojtek
klientów przez
said,
trzech
three
kwartałach
quarters into the year,
jesteśmy w celu, który
we
wyznaczyliśmy
are
na
hitting
początku
the
2022.
targets for the year that we set in early
Jeżeli
2022.
chodzi o perspektywy
Regarding the outlook
poszczególnych
for the different
branż
segments,
automotive,
automotive,
chcielibyśmy, żeby
well, we'd
ta
like the
działka się
red
obróciła
arrow
w
to
prawo, bo
turn
na razie niestety
right
jest
and
duża
turn
niepewność na tym
yellow,
rynku
but this market
i cała branża
suffers a lot of
transportowa jest
uncertainty and is under
wrażliwa,
great
ale sobie
pressure.
tutaj
We are
radzimy.
doing
Jest
quite well there, but there are
na wielu
risks
etapach
on the horizon
na
that
których
we have
musimy
to watch
uważać.
for.
Bardzo pozytywnie
A
wyróżnia
positive
wspomniany wcześniej
uh,
AdTech i
mm,
MarTech, ale też Healthcare. I tutaj
is
widzimy
AdTech and
bardzo rosnący
MarTech, as well as
potencjał.
healthcare. We see a
Pozostałych
lot of potential there.
do
As
których
regards the other business
technologicznych
units
wydzielone z czołowych, czyli
marked with a
finanse, media,
green
robotyka,
arrow,
retail,
financial
mediany
services, media,
cyfrowy
robotics, retail, e-mobility, renewables,
również występuje
the
pozytywny
trend is
chyba
positive
trend
and upward
związany z
as
zatrudnieniem ze strony
regards
klientów. W pozostałych
demand
obszarach
from customers.
sytuacja
The other
stabilizuje się.
business units
Ogólnie
are
powiedziałbym,
stable,
że
and the
perspektywy na
outlook for the
na
upcoming
kolejne
quarters,
kwartały właśnie
looking at the different
branży
sectors, seems to
wydawców
be rather good. Thank you.
i dziękuję.
Thank you
Bardzo,
very
bardzo
much for
dziękuję za
taking us
poświęcony
through this
informacje
presentation about
dotyczące tego
Q3
kwartału i
and the
perspektyw
9 months of
następnego
the
roku.
year.
Oczywiście zachęcam naszych uczestników do tego, żeby
Please ask your
zadawać te
questions.
pytania. Te pytania
We
oczywiście
have
są.
already received some questions.
Krótka informacja, może
A
techniczna dla tych, którzy
housekeeping
oczekują
comment.
swoich odpowiedzi na swoje pytania w pierwszej kolejności
If
jest
you're
taka,
expecting
że
your
najpierw
questions to be
spotkamy się nad
answered,
pytaniami
we will
dotyczącymi
first focus
operacji,
on questions
perspektyw
about operations
wzrostu
and the
firmy.
outlook for the
Następnie
company's growth.
przechodzimy do
Then we
części
will move on to
stricte
the financials.
finansowej, po to, żeby pan Wojciech się upewnił
So
na 100%, że te
Wojciech
liczby ma
uh,
pod ręką.
can share
Taka była
his
państwa wola,
numbers.
taki podział.
So
Zatem
first,
w pierwszej
let's start with
kolejności pytania
questions on
operacyjne.
operations.
Pan
Marcin
Marcin z
Nowak,
akcji Ipopema.
IPPEMA.
Dzień dobry. Pytanie o państwa
What is your
szacowanie wpływu
estimation of the
zmian w
impact of
prawie
changes
pracy
in
na
the
konieczność
labor
konwersji
law and
częściową
the
B2B na umowy
potential
o pracę
requirement
oraz
to
związanych z
convert
tym
B2B
policjami
contracts into
zatrudnianych w
employment agreements
państwowej
and
spółce?
pay outstanding
Ryzyko istnieje, kto
social
zrealizuje
security
świetną
contributions? Is there a
realizację?
risk?
Wojtku, chciałbyś
Wojtek, would you like to speak on that?
odpaść?
Do pytania już.
Right.
Do
A tak.
o
Ja
I
się
will,
skupię,
yes,
oczywiście.
of course.
Więc absolutnie raczej nie ma co
It's
szacować
hard to
żadnego wpływu
estimate
dla
any
nas, dlatego że
impact in our case because
od
from the very
początku
beginning,
działalności Spyrosoftu
Spyrosoft has
reagujemy i dostosowujemy,
adjusted,
jeżeli
if
jest taka
necessary, to
potrzeba do nasze umowy i nasze
well, we have
działanie do
aligned our
określonych
contracts and
przepisów
our
Kodeksu
operations
pracy.
to the
Jakieś 3 lata
applicable
temu
labor
zrobiliśmy
regulations.
sobie
3 years
wewnętrzny
ago,
audyt, wzięliśmy
we
niezależną
ran
firmę,
an internal
która
audit with a
przeanalizowała
third
wszystkie
party,
umowy,
a
wszystkie
company
stany
that
faktyczne,
reviewed
jeżeli
all
chodzi o
our
B2B.
contracts, B2B contracts,
Dostaliśmy jakieś
compared to the
rekomendacje i
legislation. They
wszczęliśmy
issued
to,
recommendations
wdrożyliśmy.
which we fully
Więc
implemented.
na dzień
So at this
dzisiejszy
point in
w
time,
ogóle
I
nie
do
widzę
not
żadnego wpływu i
expect
żadnych
any
zmian, które
impact. I
mielibyśmy
don't think we will be
dokonać
required to
w,
align
w
to any
ramach
extent
ewentualnej kontroli
in case of
z rynku
any
pracy.
to
supervision
jeżeli
on the part
można
of the
jeszcze
Labour
dopełnić, to
Office.
jest tak,
If
że
I may
oczywiście wiemy,
speak
że
to that,
toczą się
of course, we know that
rozmowy na temat
discussions are underway on
kwartału.
legislative
Natomiast
amendments,
proszę nam
but
dać
please give us some
przeciwwskazać,
time.
bo w tej chwili
At
nas
this point, we don't even know
interesowałoby,
what
jakie zmiany
these
będą, czy
amendments
w ogóle
will be
będą.
and whether they
Z
will
tego
be
co widać,
approved. From
prawdopodobnie
what we can see, the
ustawa
law will
będzie
probably have to be
przegłosowana
amended by a vote in Parliament that can be vetoed.
Trochę mamy w tej chwili do
So at this point in
czynienia
time,
bardziej z
it's a
insynuacjami,
media
coś się dzieje.
phenomenon.
Natomiast
Things are
jeżeli nie
happening,
mamy
but there is no
bezpośredniego
legal
dowodów, do którego
act
możemy się
to
odnosić,
speak
to
about.
siłą
So
rzeczy nie ma zbyt wielu kwestii,
there's
które
not
można
much we can
dyskutować.
discuss on this.
Tam
Well,
chodzi
the
o
thing
to,
is
że można
that
zakwestionować
B2B
umowę
contracts
B2B, że
could
to jest
be
stosunek pracy,
challenged
ale
as
A dodatkiem to, czy
apparently
gdyby nie, wszystko
employment
się odwoła, jeżeli to w
relationships.
ogóle wejdzie.
But whether this will ever
Natomiast
happen
jeżeli
and
będziemy
to what
mieli
extent we
odpowiednią
don't know.
prawę, która
Once there is a
zagwarantuje,
legal
że to
act in
będzie
place,
implementowane w
we
taki
can
sposób, jaki ma
comment its
miejsce, no
potential
to może
impact.
to jest
All we
to,
can
co
say
możemy
now
powiedzieć na
is
tej
that we
chwili.
are monitoring the situation very
Minister nam w tej
closely
chwili
and we have
zapowiedział,
some
co będzie
ideas.
zrobić,
what to do to protect ourselves against any negative adverse impact. But it's hard to speak on specifics because there is no legal act. Thank you.
Dziękuję
Przemysław
bardzo. Przemysław
Staniszewski,
portal
Stockwatch.
patrzy na
Speaking
ławki
of the
i
bench,
poziom ławki
the
wokół
bench
pracy
dropped to a
spadł do
very low
2,
level,
czyli poziom mniej niż
1.8%
0,8%.
in Q3 2025.
2025. Jakie państwo
What are
mają
your
tutaj
expectations
oczekiwania co do
regarding this quarter and
października
2026?
2026 roku?
The bench will remain low.
To jest najbardziej,
That's what
to
we
jest to, czego można
expect.
oczekiwać.
And
Wiąże się
that's
to również z tym,
due
że
to the fact that
w miejscach, w których to jest
wherever
wskazane,
possible,
korzystamy
we
coraz większym stopniu
increasingly
z freelancerów,
use freelancers,
z którymi
people
nawiązujemy
we work
współpracę
with project by
długoterminową.
project.
Jest to oczywiście też trochę
And
odpowiedź
this
na poprzedni
also
początek,
responds to the
gdy
previous
doszło do
question. If
uchwalenia i
a
wprowadzenia
new
wejścia w
law
życie
is approved
tego
and
aktu, o którym żeśmy rozmawiali.
enforced,
Natomiast my mamy prawie
we now
400
have about
takich
400
freelancerów. To
freelancers,
są osoby, które
people who come
korzystają
to
z
us,
tego
work on a
programu Freelance
project, and
Support.
then if
Jeżeli
the
projekt
project
się rozwija,
continues,
to będziemy
we
dalej współpracować, jeżeli nie,
continue to work together. Otherwise, we
nie
don't.
zainwestujemy. I to
As a result,
sprawia,
the
że ta
bench
ławka będzie
will remain low.
mała. Czy ona
Will
będzie
it be
słaba? Nie wiadomo w
1.8,
1.6
1.6 to
to 0?
0?
To
Hard to
oczywiście
say.
ciężko przewidywać, bo faktycznie przy
With this
takich
very low
projektach
level,
mamy do czynienia z ludźmi, którzy
it's
faktycznie są
people
pomiędzy projektami.
between
Proszę
projects.
zauważyć, że dla nas
For us,
ci
the
pracownicy
key
są
employees
bardzo
are
cenni i
very
kluczowi.
important.
I
They
my
are
zawsze
key,
ich
so they will
utrzymujemy,
always stay on the bench
jeżeli
because
tylko
they are
jest
key.
kluczowy. Także
So
będzie jakiś
the
czas,
bench will
na której będą osoby, które są z punktu widzenia
remain in
biznesu
place
kluczowe,
because we have
które nie
some
mogą
key
być
employees who
freelancerami, bo
cannot
one
be
sprawiają, że
outsourced
klienci
to
z nami chcą
freelancers.
współpracować.
They
Mówiąc kolokwialnie,
really
płacą
are
nam za
our
to.
project
Czyli te
leaders
osoby w dalszym ciągu będą
who clients
pracownikami.
want to work with.
Tu
So they will
zamiast
remain
na
in our
programy
employ.
outsourcing, więc jakiś
So
sposób
there
te
will
osoby
be a
tutaj
bench of sorts, but the bench level will remain low. Thank you.
Dziękuję
Przemysław
bardzo.
Staniszewski, Stockwatch PL.
PL. Jeszcze raz
Could you
poprosił o
share
podanie
more
trochę większej
details
ilości
about
informacji na temat
the
realizacji kontraktów
implementation of the
BBC,
BBC
czyli tych
contract?
najlepszych kodów do tej
What is
pory
the
z całej
total
sieci
revenue
zrealizowanych
so
tego
far
kontraktu, na
under
ile
this contract? How
jeszcze
much more are you
znajdują się,
expecting
kiedy
to make?
mniej więcej jest
And
zapewnione trwanie
until
tego
when
zlecenia,
are you
jeżeli zostaną na
expecting this
dzisiaj do zamówienia,
contract to
lub również
continue?
sterowane w innych
And these
kontynentowych
questions also
przewidywalnych
come
graficznych
from
działach
other
przez
retail
kraju, czy
investors.
przy przewidywalnym
Over
horyzoncie
the
w zasadzie
foreseeable
skala
future,
sprzedaży
will
będzie
the
zbliżona w
revenue
podobnym
level
trybie do
remain
podobnych ofertach
stable
w poprzednich
compared to
okresach?
the previous quarters?
W skrócie tak.
To be brief,
Natomiast
yes,
jeżeli chodzi
but
dokładnie o
exactly how much we've made and how many people, we will reply by email because I don't have the data to share and I don't want you to think I'm spreading misinformation. But the scale of the project is well known, 32.5 million pounds sterling. But we will provide the details by email.
Taki
This
kontrakt
is a
jeszcze
3 plus 1
do
plus 1
drugiego,
contract,
czyli
so in
do
total 5 years,
2025.
possibly.
Natomiast
But
oczywiście szczegółowe
we
dane
will
gdzieś
email you the
znajdą,
details
żeby być
to be precise.
precyzyjniejsi. Natomiast
But
jeżeli chodzi o
regarding
nasze
our
oczekiwania na
expectations for
przyszły
next
rok,
year,
to one
it's
są
positive.
pozytywne.
I think the
Kontrakt
contract
zostanie
will
utrzymany
be
i
extended. I don't have any
prawdopodobnie
reason to
nie ma
believe
źle
that
się
anything would
zapowiedzieć, a
change,
na
and
pewno nie
definitely not
będzie.
much. Patrick Stańczak, retail investor, is asking about
Jak
your
przebiega współpraca
cooperation
z
with the
Polską
Polish
Instytucją
financial
Finansową?
institution.
Czy od
Since
poprzedniej
the last
konferencji
meeting
perspektywa dłuższej współpracy jest
is
bardziej
a
czy mniej
long-term
prawdopodobna?
collaboration, more or less likely.
Sebastianie, chciałbyś odpowiedzieć?
Sebastian, will you take it?
Tak,
Sure.
tak, właśnie tutaj
We are
uśmiechnęliśmy się.
smiling because the
Współpraca
collaboration with the
z
Polish
instytucją
financial
finansową
institution is
przebiega powoli, ale pozytywnie
slow but
rozpoczęliśmy
positive, moving
fazę
forward.
pilota,
It's a
więc
pilot now.
przebiega
The
dobrze.
pilot is doing well, the scale is growing. We are optimistic.
I patrząc
So
tak
looking
naprawdę na
at the
kolejne
next
kwartały,
quarters and
kolejne
years,
lata, wydaje się, że
it seems the
kontakt
contract
wyniesie
should
coraz
be
większych
increasingly
przychodów, natomiast to są nasze oczekiwania, ale
important
wszystko
in our revenue streams, but it's taking place slowly, step by step, as it always does with a financial institution of this size. As we saw the arrow next to automotive pointing downwards, so Patrick is asking, will you be working with Magna again in the coming periods, or is it just a wish list? Well, this arrow is pointing down very, very strongly. Is this realistic? Not at this point in time, I think, but not because Magna is unhappy with its collaboration with Spyro. Rather, Magna itself is under great pressure, and we are in constant communication with companies like Magna. Whenever things improve or pick up, I think we have a big chance to restore our collaboration with Magna. But at this point in time, there is no space, no room for that. First, Magna has to win a contract as a tier one provider to an OEM buyer. And Patrick is asking, I've been watching the performance of the subsidiaries. Ravel is something that raises your brows. What's happened over the past few quarters? This company is showing very positive growth. I can take this question. Ravel has won several contracts, including a very big contract, which has had a very positive contribution to Ravel, to its performance. Looking forward, I think this will continue and the growth should remain stable. So mainly it's an impact of several new big contracts that Ravel won. Łukasz Fischer, retail investor, asks about the scope of a cooperation with Orlen. Anything you can share? What we can share has been shared in the press release and the report on the stock exchange. That's all we can share. Orlen is very sensitive when it comes to disclosures, so I'm sorry to say we cannot share more. All we shared is all we can share at this point. But this contract is very important for us and very forward-looking. I know I haven't answered your question, but again, I said all I could. Sorry. Thank you. Patrick says, Industry 4.0 has had another good quarter and a good growth in revenue. Is it an ongoing trend or just clearing of some contracts? It's an ongoing trend. This business unit is doing very well. Thank you. Could you summarize the cost of acquisitions in 2025? Do you know the total?
To ja powiem.
Well,
Jeżeli
let me take it.
Powiedziałem też tutaj pytanie o sam trzeci kwartał, więc my w pierwszym
There was a question about Q3 alone, but in Q1 and Q2, we invested about 1 million each quarter for M&As. In Q4, we're expecting a similar amount, maybe bigger, slightly bigger. We are running due diligence reviews. They are underway depending on how they come out, maybe more or less. So we know about the first 3 quarters for sure, but Q4 is still an open question. We'll see how the due diligence continues. Another question, Michał Baryła is asking, could you share your take on the outlook of M&As? What is the price range you would accept? What are the strategic goals except for building a client portfolio? And what is your budget for potential M&As in 2026? Sure. The objectives, the strategic targets are customers in the US. That's number one. And we're trying to link that to production and delivery from EMEA. And this is something that we're looking at. Another objective is things we do little or none of, but we want to do more of. I'm speaking of defense and the Gulf states. If we can make an acquisition, if we can buy entities in these areas, we will consider that very carefully. Another point of focus in the coming years, public procurement, public tenders. So companies that are working with public tenders are also of interest to us. Having said that, we will be talking about opportunistic goals as well, so to say. If there's anything that is a good match for our portfolio, not a strategic objective, but worthwhile in terms of price, where we can generate good synergies by adding the entity to the group, we'll do that. As for the price range, sorry, but I don't want to commit to any price. Let me put it differently. The first acquisitions we did were small. We did that to see how to best integrate new companies within the group. So we've had several such acquisitions. More are in the pipeline. We are ready now, I think, for bigger acquisitions. And I believe the bigger acquisitions, well, the process will start next year, 2026. We plan to make bigger deals because now we are ready. When it comes to financials, you can have a look at our balance sheet and see how much we have on the balance sheet. And you are aware of the leverage that is typical of our sector. We will be trying to spend the money we have for acquisitions. We want to spend that money plus leverage on acquisition. Bernroe is asking about other criteria for picking acquisition targets or partners, apart from growing your footprint or customer base. Yes, there are some key criteria. For instance, interhuman relationships. This is a business done by humans for humans. So we have to remember, if we welcome a new company to the group, interpersonal relationships have to work. So I have to be personally sure that we can talk to the people from the acquisition target, if they stay with the target after the acquisition. That's a parameter, a criterion that is hard to quantify. But all the acquisitions we've done so far were done with this in mind, and this is why they've all been successful. And let me also make a comment. Our company is managed by the owners. So if an acquisition fails in terms of interpersonal relationships as well, that's something we have to live with afterwards. So we are making every effort to find targets that are good match in terms of culture and the mindset, a good match for who we are. And apart from that, we also look at the financials, of course. We run legal due diligence, etc. So there are many factors at play, but the key parameter that is not often discussed, the interpersonal dimension, that's something we care about a lot. Mikołaj Olechowski, retail investor. Question that comes up every quarter and will continue. How much is AI-produced code better in quality? Do you think in a few years clients will become independent of software house by developing their own code, writing their own code? Is code produced by LLMs such as Anthropic increasingly better in quality? The US is not hiring anymore. Companies are turning to AI. We hear that in the headlines. Well, let's put things in order first. I could have a day-long presentation and still touch only on the fundamentals, but let me give you this in a nutshell. Of course, we hear a lot about AI. This is a fashionable topic. So let's make a clear differentiation between what's being said and what's being done. AI uptake or AI adoption is taking place very slowly. You can see the statistics. That's one thing. Number two, it's not the first time that a new technology disrupts our industry. Remember that public cloud had a much bigger impact on how we deliver software. Public cloud was a much bigger breakthrough to software producers than AI by a magnitude, an order of a great magnitude. And we still need engineers and programmers, but our work keeps evolving. Some of the things AI does don't have to be done by humans. But the key point in our industry is to know what the customer needs and to tell them what they need to implement. That is exactly what we are doing. Our job now is not to write code anymore. It's to put together little blocks to produce solutions and implement them for customers. This is exactly what we do. So writing code itself, of course, that still happens. And in some niche markets, it will be very much in demand. But writing code from scratch has not been happening for a decade because we use existing cloud-based components that have already been written. And that's nothing new. We still put those blocks together. Now, AI is writing code. Sometimes it's better code, sometimes it's worse. Front end, for instance, well, it's easier to use AI because you can see what you get. In the back end, it's something you can't see, so it's hard. You need an expert to know whether what has been produced by AI makes sense. So if you're asking me, will technology get rid of programmers? Well, this debate has been ongoing for 20 years, and we always end up deciding that we are still needed. And public cloud had a much bigger impact on it than AI does now. Now, from our point of view, from our perspective, AI helps a lot. What we do is we have small teams working over a short term, delivering value to customers. That is what represents 85% of our business. So now that we have a tool to speed up the process, it works for us, it works for customers. Some companies' business model is based on delivering hundreds of people to the customer, and they don't know what these people are doing. It's body leasing, right? That's up to 15% of what we do, not more. But for us, AI helps. AI means we can hire more people. But of course, it changes what we do. Our people have to get educated and we have to help them. But that's always been the case in AI, in IT. Sorry, I was too long, perhaps. That's interesting. But I wanted to answer your question in full. I think that that's been quite exhaustive, but we could have this day-long lecture. Sure. Some questions about the strategic review. Could you outline where we are, what we can expect, and when we are expecting to close the review? What is the expectation? Would you be moving to another stock exchange? Well, we're at the final stage. We will let you know before the year end. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Cezary Malczewski, individual investor. In the defense industry, are you participating in any tenders? Do you have a chance to generate bigger revenue in the next quarter or two? If I may comment, yes, we take part in procurement, but remember, this industry is strictly standardized and subject to extensive restrictions. So wherever we can, we take part in tenders. For instance, NISA, something we have recently mentioned. So we take part in new procurement procedures. On the other hand, we want our organization to be ready to take part in tenders that we currently cannot take part in because we don't have industrial security clearance that we will soon have. It's a certification which allows us to work with secret classified data internationally using our own infrastructure. And that's critical for many tenders in the market. I'm not expecting any fireworks in the coming quarters when it comes to revenue in defense. It's starting slowly, just like the financial institution we mentioned. But once we are there, once we make a presence, I'm sure this will be one of the key drivers for our future. We are looking at the international markets and the Polish market. We know that we spend a big part of our GDP on defense. It's mostly hardware, but not only hardware. We would also like to use these budgets and work with Polish companies. Sebastian said about the agro industry in your presentation. What kind of clients are you looking for? What business opportunities do you expect in agro? Well, where are the business opportunities? Agro include producers of agricultural machines, which are increasingly digital. So that's close to automotive, that's one point. And there are many tools for state-of-the-art planning of sowing or production. These are our areas of focus. It's a very early stage for this business unit, so we need to wait and see what happens in the upcoming quarters. Let's talk about the financials now. Time is short, we are almost coming to an end. So, financials. Marcin Nowak, Ipopema. What is the impact on EBITDA in Q3 from automotive versus the minus 7 million in Q2 2025? Regarding the adverse impact, I think that's the point, the adverse impact in Q3,
Tak
Well,
naprawdę ten
the biggest impact on our results happened in Q2 as a result of the termination of the Magna project, where we paid the cost of severance, paid the bench,
plus dodatkowo
plus we stepped up
przyspieszyliśmy rozwój
the
business
development
unitu
of
defense,
the
także
defense
chodzi o
business unit, which
strategiczne koszty,
also
więc
had an impact on
negatywny
costs. So the
wpływ
adverse
muszę powiedzieć,
impact,
jak
you can see it if you compare Q2 to Q3. Most of it happened in Q2. In Q3, the adverse impact was much smaller.
I widzimy, że przechodzimy de
So
facto
we
w
are
fazę
actually
takiego
moving into a
pozytywnego
positive
wpływu na
territory when it
wyniki,
comes
jeżeli
to
chodzi o
the impact of
odwrót
automotive on
ograniczony
our
wielkości
financials. It's
niż
much more limited than
oczekiwano.
in the previous quarters. Thank you.
Dziękuję. To pan
Jarosław
Jarosław Goniewski. Jeszcze
Godomski
pytanie
has
o
a question
EBITDA na
about
początku
EBITDA. In the
konferencji.
last
Czy
meeting, you
planowano
expected that
gotowość
the
wydania
EBITDA margin in
40% to mogłoby
2025
być
could be
blisko
close to the
dolnego poziomu
uh,
widełek ze strategii, to jest 50%
11%
lub nieco poniżej. Czy coś
floor
się zmieniło
in
od
your
poprzednio?
strategy in the range,
Poprzednio
or even
zadziałał,
below?
tak
Has
jak
anything
na
changed?
prezentacji
After Q3,
wspominaliśmy,
it's
sama nazwa firmy
10.7,
10.7, czyli bardzo podobne
very
jak
similar
i
to
w drugim,
Q2.
ale
But if you look
jeżeli weźmiemy pod
at the
uwagę
fact,
koszty
well, at the M&A
zewnętrzne, zyskujemy
costs,
od
if you
razu
adjust for
powyżej
M&A
tego
costs,
dolnego
we're
celu.
above
Wydaje
the
mi się, że do końca roku
lower uh,
będzie to tak
band
wyglądało,
in
że
our
będziemy tutaj ten
forecast range. So I think
uzyskali
we will
znowu ten
be close
11%
to the 11%
11% cyfrę.
level, either
Przemysław,
slightly below or
Przemysław
slightly above.
Staniszewski
Przemysław
na
Staniszewski,
początku
Stockwatch.
tych
What is
wielkich
the
wpływów
impact of
walut
FX
na salę
rates on
co się
Q3
wydarzało?
results? Well,
Szybko
I
sobie
ran a
policzymy.
quick
Pan tutaj zdradził
calculation
moją kuchnię, bo to
uh,
tego mieliśmy policzone szybko za
for the
3
three quarters
kwartały.
of the year.
Więc jeżeli
So in
chodzi o sam
Q3
trzeci
alone, actually,
kwartał, to biorąc pod uwagę też
considering
nasze
the three
waluty,
main
to jest to
currencies,
spadek o
that's down
2,65%, jeżeli weźmiemy miliony
2.65%
dolarów
for the US, the
i
pound, and the
i
euro.
euro.
The impact
Jest to około
is about 3.3
6,3
million.
miliona wpływu. Większy przychód
That's
byśmy mieli,
how
gdybyśmy
how
uruchomili te
bigger our
kalkulacje
revenue
bankowe
would have been
z
had
pierwszych
the FX
kwartałów.
rates remained stable,
I marża
and the
by się
margin
zwiększyła o
would have been
1,3%. Co
1.3%
podkreślam,
bigger, or percentage
jak
points.
potrafimy zaradzić, jeżeli chodzi o EBITDA
But as an
za całą
organization, we're
organizację,
trying to mitigate the
że
impact
jednak
on
ta marża
EBITDA,
była tam
so the
niesłaba,
margin is
więc
not
to jest
dropping
tak zwana
sharply.
teoria
That's the
relatywnego
theory
spadku
of
kosztów,
relatively
czyli ceny,
lost
prawda,
income
które dzięki
with the
kursem
FX rates.
walutowym nam
That's not
napomagania.
helping. A question
Pytanie
about
o
the
ulgę na
R&D
bankowy
tax
rozwój
relief
do
for
2022.
2025
Jeszcze raz pan
from
Przemysław Staniszewski.
Przemysław Staniszewski.
Którą to ulgę grupa planuje rozliczyć
You're
na koniec
planning
roku,
to
aby to mogło
clear
w
that
jakimś
tax
stopniu
relief at the end of the
zapobiec
financial year. How much could it improve the net
rozpoznania?
profit margin
Po
after
3 kwartałach
recognition?
mówimy
After
o
the three
kwocie
quarters, it's
2,4
2.3
miliona, które
million.
mamy
That's how much we
rozpoznane
recognized
w
in
podatkach, jeżeli
taxation
chodzi o
of
polskie
the Polish
przedsiębiorstwa,
companies. Plus,
plus dodatkowo jeszcze jeden
we have
wniosek złożyliśmy w momencie,
filed
kiedy
one more
dostaniemy
application. We
przelew,
don't know when
to
we
może
will
być w
get the
pierwszym
transfer,
kwartale
maybe in
roku.
Q1.
To jest
That's
około
about
1,4
1.4
miliona, więc
million.
tyle, plus
Plus,
dodatkowo wyjdzie nam, nie,
yeah,
to dobrze, to 2,4
2.4
miliona
in
przez
the
3 kwartały
three quarters,
plus
plus one
jeden wniosek,
additional
który
request
wciąż jest
still
procedowany, jeżeli chodzi o
being
spółkę
processed
polską.
for a Polish company.
Jeszcze
Another
raz pan
question from
Przemysław
Przemysław
Staniszewski.
Staniszewski.
Pytanie o
EBITDA
EBITDA związaną z
relating to
M&A i
M&As.
wnioski
What
koszty
were the
M&A,
M&A
które w
costs that
miesiącu
you deduct from
EBITDA w
the
trzecim
EBITDA
kwartale i na
in
rok
Q3
bieżący?
and year to
I to tak
date?
jak już mówiłem, w drugim
In
kwartale
Q2,
były to
about
około
1
2
million,
zł, w
Q3
trzecim
similar
kwartale
amount,
2,
so for the two
2
quarters,
kwartały,
1 plus 1 equals 2.
daje 2.
Question.
Pytanie, czy
The
rosnąca
growing
poduszka efektowa
cash
na bilansie
on your
dochodów
balance
nastąpi w momencie
sheet, almost
wydania
50
oraz
million at the end of Q3.
kapitałowej
Are you
nadwyżki
planning to spend
zewnętrznej
it
będzie
mostly
maksymalizowany w tym
for
wyniku, a
the
akcjonariusze mniejszościowi
buyout of
zobowiązani tam
minority
będziecie
interests in
płacić, czy
subsidiaries?
są
Will you be paying with
cel
your own
własny
shares? I
Ja
don't
wspominałem
remember
w
we
tym komentarzu,
said
że my sugerowaliśmy, że
we would be
będziemy
buying
zachowani
out
akcjonariuszy
minority
mniejszościowych. Na tym
interests.
etapie
At this
taka
point, this
decyzja
has not been
zapadła
decided.
i jeżeli miałbym powiedzieć
As
standard
at the
biznesowy na chwilę
25th of
listopowego, to
November,
raczej to, co Konrad
it's just like
określał
Konrad said, we
podstawowe
will be
pieniądze
using this
na
money to
M&A,
pay
tak?
for acquisitions, M&As.
Tak na teraz bym
That's
powiedział,
our
żeby to
intention. That's what
mogliśmy
we want
zrobić.
to invest the money
Tak,
Przeznaczyć.
in.
tutaj w
Fully
pewnych
agreed.
procentach
I
nie szło o
don't
to,
think we
żebyśmy
ever
byli nawet
suggested we
sugerowani, że
would be
musimy mieć
using
tych
our
pieniędzy cała
cash
sztuka do
to buy out
ukrywać udziały od spółek zależnych.
interest
Ale
in
wróćmy do
subsidiaries.
tematu.
No, that's never been a
To
plan.
nie jest nasz
It is
plan.
not our plan.
Pewne
As I
środki
said,
z
the
pieniądze,
cash
które mamy,
on
które gromadzimy,
the balance sheet
zamierzamy przeznaczyć
will
na akwizycje i przejęcia.
be used for acquisitions, M&As.
Dziękuję.
Thank you.
To
One
jeszcze
more
jedno pytanie,
question,
pan
Bernrow.
Bernrow.
Is
Czy
the
zarząd
management board
spodziewa się
expecting the record
utrzymania
high
przychodów również w
growth
kolejnych
in
kwartałach?
revenue
Czy
to
obecny poziom wzrostu
be
można
sustained in the
traktować
coming
jako
quarters?
trwały
Is this a
trend, czy też
lasting
raczej
trend
jako
or
wynik
just an
wyjątkowo dużych
outcome of
projektów
several big
BBC?
projects like the
Jeżeli
BBC
mogę,
project?
powiedzieć,
Thank you for your
dziękuję za
question.
pytanie przede wszystkim. I teraz powiem
Let
tak,
me put it this
myślę,
way.
że tak,
I think so,
ale
but
mamy do czynienia z sytuacją
we have to deal
międzynarodową,
with the
która bardzo
international
może wpłynąć na
conditions
swoje przemyślenia.
that could impact
Wyobraźmy
our
sobie, że jutro
results.
prezydent Stanów Zjednoczonych
Say tomorrow
postanawiają
the
wstąpić do
president of
NATO,
the US decides to
prawda?
pull out of
To nie jest
NATO.
to scenariusz, który możemy
That is not
wykluczyć.
out of the
I jak
question
się
as a
będzie miało
scenario.
to
How will that
przychodów
impact our
powiązanych
results, our
z
revenue?
tym? To jest sporo rzeczy, które
Adversely,
mogą
I think. There are many
wpłynąć.
potential
Natomiast
adverse impacts,
ten
but
Stary
all things
scenariusz,
being
który jest
equal, if nothing
proponowany,
changes,
to
next year
przyszły rok
is
zapowiada
looking
się
good.
dobrze. Czy będzie to dokładnie tyle, ile w
Will
tym
it be
roku?
exactly the same as this year?
Może być tyle
Possibly,
samo, może być trochę
possibly
więcej, może być
less,
trochę mniej,
possibly a
ale
little bit more,
oczekujemy
but we expect
zdecydowanie
significant
więcej.
growth.
I na pewno nie jest to wpływ
And that's not an impact of
wyłącznie
one-off
jakiegoś
contracts.
szczęścia albo przypadku.
It's
Jest
not
to wpływ
any
tego, że po
coincidence.
pierwsze
It's because we are fully
jesteśmy
diversified
w
by
branży
region, by sector, and by technology.
Jest to
It's
wpływ
also
tego,
because
co
we are
inwestujemy,
investing,
co oczywiście obniża
which
naszą marżę EBITDA, ale sprawia,
reduces
że
our EBITDA margin but
kwotowo
grows our revenue
inwestujemy
and the
więcej.
amount
I jest to
of
również
EBITDA.
wpływ tego, że
And
będziemy
that's
inwestować
also
w
because we are
projekty, które
investing
będziemy
in
mieli
new companies we
rozsądne.
want to
Natomiast w
acquire.
organicznym
But
wzroście
organic
możemy się
growth is
spodziewać
expected to
różnych
remain solid
rzeczy.
as well.
To nie jest tak, że wzrost
Our
będzie się
growth will not
rozpływał
all
z
come from
inwestycji.
M&As, not at all.
Koniec roku
It's
trochę
hard to
agresywny na
anticipate
przewidzenia, natomiast
how
patrząc
the
na
next year will
pierwszy
end, but
kwartał,
looking at
tutaj
the first
można
Q or
być
two,
zdecydowanie
the
optymistą.
first two quarters
Natomiast
of
chciałbym
next year, we are
zaznaczyć, że jest
relatively
bardzo
optimistic. But I
dużo
have to say
tych
that there are so
sytuacji
many
geopolitycznych,
geopolitical and
gospodarczych,
economic factors
które
that
może
may
wpłynąć na to, że te przewidywania
disrupt our
wzrostu
expectations, but that's
państwa
something you're fully aware of. Thank you.
Dziękuję, panie prezesie.
The
Chińczycy mówią,
Chinese say,
już niedobrze życzyć, obyś żył w ciekawych
may you
czasach.
live in interesting
Ładujemy
times, and
takich
that's a
bez zarówno ryzyk, jak i
curse.
szans sporo.
We are living in
Natomiast
interesting times with
sporo
lots
też
of
można
risks
pytań,
and
bo nie
opportunities.
widzę nowych
I
otwartych
don't have
pytań,
any
które mogą
additional
się zarąbać,
questions.
przekazać
I think
swoje
these are
pytania.
all the questions that
Było ich bardzo wiele. Zostało
our
już
participants have
zadanych pytania,
asked
nawet
and
jeśli
you have answered.
wprost czytałem państwa pytania, to z pewnością to były pytania,
Some of
które
the
się
questions
powtarzały.
were repetitive,
Zatem
so I
zachęcam
would
zarząd do
not read them
jakieś
out, but
kilka minut dla
we still
nas.
have some time
Jest moment na to, żeby te
for
pytania
your
zadawać.
questions, and
Naturalnie
we are, of
niestety będą
course,
Państwo dostępni
there for you after this
po
meeting.
zakończeniu spotkania, więc
In
jeżeli
between
Państwo
our
mają
meetings, we are happy
jakieś
to
tematy
take any
trafiają.
of your questions.
Pan
Michał
Jarosław
Stopka,
Marc
individual investor,
kontynuując,
could
można
you
prosić o
elaborate
podjęcie
on
wątku,
why
dlaczego
the adoption
adopcja
of AI
jest wolno
is so slow?
wprowadzana? Ja mam wrażenie, że pan
I think
prezes o tym mówił, ale
Konrad
może
mentioned that, but
zapominał.
To jest bardzo
maybe you would
dobre
like to
pytanie. Tak,
add anything.
ona jest
Yes,
wolna.
AI
Proces
adoption
adopcji
is
jest
very
wolny.
slow.
Tylko
Question is
pytanie
why?
dlaczego? Przede wszystkim proszę spojrzeć na rzecz trochę
Well,
historycznie.
historically
Adopcja
speaking,
czegokolwiek rzadko
nothing
przebiega
was ever
błyskawicznie. I teraz,
adopted
co ja mam na myśli, mówiąc, że adopcja
quickly.
przebiega
What
wolno?
does it mean
Chodzi mi na
AI
przykład o
uptake
wskaźnik,
is
który
slow?
pokazuje, jaki
Look at the
procent
percentage
usług i
of goods or
towarów w ciągu na przykład
services
ostatniego
that
kwartału
have been
został
produced in the
wyprodukowany
last quarter
przez
using
firmy.
AI.
Takie
And these
statystyki
statistics
są
are
dostępne.
available. If
Jak
you look at
Państwo
them,
na nie
you
spojrzą,
can
to
see
zobaczą, że jest
it's
to
10%.
10%. Nawet w
Even
firmach
in
IT-owych
IT
pozostaje
companies,
to tak. Jest to
20%.
niewielki
So it's a
procent.
small
I teraz
percentage.
tak, jeżeli mówimy o
Now,
ludziach, o pracownikach,
speaking of
to
people,
jest okej,
employees,
że
the
adopcja przyszła
uptake is
powiedzmy w
much bigger than 10 or
2020.
20%.
Trudno
Many
oczekiwać,
employees
żeby
use
szybko
AI,
wróciła,
they
trzeba
use
będzie się upewnić, że
ChatGPT
ten pomysł
to
miał rację. Natomiast
facilitate their
nie
work,
byłoby
but
tego,
it's
że
not the same
adopcja
as AI
AI
uptake
jako
by
przedsiębiorstwa,
companies,
gdzie
which
przedsiębiorstwo
have to
musi
develop
robić badania,
strategies,
musi policzyć koszty
run
związane z tą
cost
adopcją,
estimates of the
wdrożyć pewne
uptake,
rozwiązania,
implement
uzyskać
solutions, and
akwizycji.
wait to
Ten
see
proces jest bardzo wolny.
profits.
Ludzie
This
indywidualnie
process
używają,
takes
prawda? AI, a
place very
używa
slowly.
firma
People
też.
individually
Natomiast to nie
use
jest to
AI,
samo,
as
jak
do I,
przedsiębiorstwo
but
robi
it's not the same
strategię
for
i
companies
produkuje
which have
towary,
strategies
usługi
and produce goods
dotyczące
or
usługi
services using AI.
Ten proces jest
This
wolny.
process is
Jeżeli
slow,
mówimy o
so it's going to
nastąpieniu,
take
miejmy
5
nadzieję,
years or
latach,
more
żeby w
before
większości
the
przedsiębiorstw
majority of companies
to
use
już
AI.
zadziałało. I teraz
Why is
dlaczego tak
that?
jest? Po
First of all,
pierwsze,
big
duże
companies,
przedsiębiorstwa,
big
duże
financial
instytucje,
institutions
których
that can afford
zasadzie,
it,
już nie mówiąc o
not to mention
hyperscalerach, tak,
hyperscalers,
dużych firmach
huge AI
amerykańskich, ze Stanów
companies in the
Zjednoczonych,
US who
które
came up
wymyśliły
with AI,
one
They don't have a problem with that. But mid-sized companies, smaller companies, they do not have people in-house who could run this process.
stwierdzić, nawet jak ktoś przyjdzie z
or
zewnątrz,
even
bo firma
decide
zewnętrzna
whether
firma
a
może ma
third-party
sens, czy nie,
contractor
to oni muszą
offers
znać
something that makes
dopiero,
sense.
co to
They have
jest,
to
w jaki
learn about
sposób,
it.
w jaki
They have
sposób to
to
się wdroży.
know how
Tutaj
to buy it,
rzeczywiście
how
nie
to
ma takiej
implement it.
badań.
And that's
Proszę
where we
zauważyć, tak
come
jak
in.
mówiliście
As
Państwo,
Sebastian said,
4%
4% of our revenue
naszej
is
spółki to jest
generated
usługa
by
AI.
AI, but
I
the
to ten
4%
4% to
is
jest
AI
consulting,
consulting.
to
We
jesteśmy
go
my,
to
którzy idziemy do
clients and we say,
klienta i mówimy,
dear
drogi
client,
kliencie,
you should
powinieneś
implement
wdrożyć AI w
AI
Polskę
here,
w ten
here, and there.
sposób. To jest
It's
dla
good
ciebie
for you.
dobre.
And the
Tak? I ten
client
klient, jeżeli
makes a
zdecyduje,
decision.
to
And then the
później
work we
wniosek, który
do
wykonujemy, częściowo nie
is
będzie na
partly
AI. To
not
może
AI
polegać na
related. It could
postawieniu
be
tego
setting up a
klienta, czy na
server.
zaprogramowaniu czegoś.
And
I
then
do tego procesu,
we use
jeżeli
AI
wdrożymy
in
AI,
this
ale musimy
process,
mieć
but
trzy
for us it
procesy.
is not AI
Pierwszy
generated
problem
revenue.
to jest taki,
The
że
first point is
ludzie nie
people
wiedzą,
don't know
jak
how to
zrobić.
buy it.
Drugi problem jest
Problem
taki,
number
że
two,
jest
it's
to
very
bardzo drogie.
expensive. To
Wdrożenie
implement
tego
these
typu
solutions
rozwiązań jest
is
bardzo drogie. I
expensive.
trzeci
Problem
problem jest
number
taki,
three,
że AI, on
AI
bardzo mocno zmienia
transform
strukturę procesów i
a
organizacji firmy.
company's
Jeżeli mamy
processes and
firmę
organization. If you have a
1 osób,
mid-sized company
ona musi
of 1,000
spojrzeć u
people,
siebie,
they have to
przyciągnąć
transform
ludzi,
internally,
musi
hire
zmienić
some
sposób
people,
filozofii,
lay
zmienić
others off,
procesy,
change
zmienić
its
organizację,
processes,
zmienić
its
strukturę.
organization, its
W
governance.
pełni
Full
pełna
AI
adopcja AI
adoption
wiąże się
means
z tym, że mamy do czynienia z
it's a new
departyzowaniem
company, it's a
czynności.
different
No i
company.
oczywiście
And the
ostatni
final
problem,
factor,
i można by
there
się
are
tu
some
poddać
more,
takiej
but the last one I want to
strategii,
mention.
to to, że technologia
Technology,
jest
the
jeszcze na
technology
zbyt
is
niskim etapie.
still
Ona
young,
nie jest
it's not
doskonała.
perfect.
Oczywiście
There
mamy
are some
spektakularne
spectacular
przykłady, jak ona działa, ale
examples,
proszę zauważyć, że
but
no, za 5 dni będzie
it
dopiero
will
3
be 3 years
lata
in
od
5 days
jak
since
ChatGPT w ogóle
ChatGPT
został wypuszczony. To jest
was
bardzo,
released.
bardzo
It's still very
nowatorstwo
new.
i bardzo wiele
In
osób
many
uważa,
ways,
że
it's
to wszystko
helping,
pomaga, ale jak
but there is
dużo
still
osób
a
na tym
long way
zyskuje,
to go.
to proszę zobaczyć, ile
And
firm uzyskają
see, look at how
na
much companies
naszym
are
szkoleniu, a
spending on
serwerze, a w
servers,
ogóle na
chips,
AI. To
AI,
są setki
hundreds of
miliardów
billions
dolarów.
of dollars.
Technologia się
This
rozwija.
technology is
I
growing.
również dlatego
So
czasami firmy
companies
mówią,
say,
no
okay,
dobrze, ja poczekam, jak
let me
zrobią
wait
coś takiego nowego,
6
coś
months. We'll
fajnego.
see
Jest masa
what
przyczyn.
they come
Ale
up
to
with,
są
then we
takie
may
przykłady
implement.
może takich, które...
But anyone can do it.
Dziękuję bardzo. Pytanie
So we
tutaj
have another
jeszcze
question,
zauważył
this
pan
question
Robert
from
Fiołek.
Robert
Panie Robercie,
Fiołek.
jeśli nie odpowiedzieliśmy na to
Oh,
pytanie,
that was the
proszę
question from
przyznać.
Robert
Tak,
Fiołek. I
czytam
hope
pana
I've
pytania. Mam
answered
wrażenie, że
this
chyba część
question.
wyczerpaliśmy.
We have answered
Myślę,
this
że teraz
question. So
pójdziemy
let's
do
have one more.
następnego.
Patrick
Pan Patryk
Stańczak.
Stańczak, czy wspomniana
Your
strategia
strategy mentioned
konsolidacji oddziałów klientów
consolidation
Spyrosoft
of
na bazie wyników za 2025
results in the
rok to aktualny
Spyrosoft Group
scenariusz.
based on your Q3
Tutaj pragnę zauważyć, że
2025
dotyczy to sporej części
results. Is
spółek
this
europejskich, a
likely
po
to happen?
drugie
Well,
jest
it
to część
concerns some companies,
księgowości
not all,
strategicznych
and it's part of our strategic
firm,
review, and the outcome will
sfinalizować do końca
be
tego roku.
published by the year's
Planowy
end.
sporo lub
So it's either 2026, 2027.
I
To
tam
ja
jest
bym,
taki...
ja bym dodał, Konradzie, że my musimy, jeżeli rok
If it's
2026 miałby być
2026 as the
wzorowym
reference year,
referencyjny, to musimy
we
to
have to
ogłosić do
publish
15
that by the
grudnia.
15th of
Patrząc na
December.
kalendarz, jak widzimy, kalendarz związany z
Looking at the
przeglądami
timeline
strategicznymi,
of our
może się
strategic
tak
review, we
wydarzyć, że
may
nie
not
zdążymy
have
podjąć
enough time to
decyzji,
decide whether to
rozpocząć
continue
ten przegląd,
the
czy
review or to
kończymy, więc do
close it. So
15
the
grudnia
15th of
jeżeli mamy
December
komunikat, bo
as a
musimy tym
cutoff, we
komunikatem
need to
ogłosić rok
make a
referencyjny z rokiem
release
26, to automatycznie
choosing
możemy założyć
2026
zgodnie
as
też
the
z
reference year. So under
umowami z
our
akcjonistami
contracts
mniejszościowymi, być
or
może to
agreements
ma
with minority shareholders, it may
bezpośrednictwo
actually be
i ponadto
2027.
nie możemy tego
And
wydłużyć
that's
dalej
something we
dla
cannot
obecnych
extend for our
akcjonistów.
existing minority shareholders.
Dziękuję. Pan Robert
Robert
Fiołek prosi jednak,
Fiołek
żeby to pytanie
wants me to
zadać.
ask this
Jest dość
question.
szczegółowe. Czy rewolucja AI
Does
wpłynie
the AI
na
revolution
widoczność firm
impact the
informatycznych, ale także na klientów, czyli jak
visibility
rozwiązania
of
są używane
technology companies
klientami,
and the clients
to nie wiedzą,
who don't know
co
what to buy
zamawiać wobec
in the
nowych,
changing
dostosowanych
environment because
i
what they plan for
efektywnych.
may now
Czy
be
widać w związku
obsolete?
z tym
Is there a
ryzyko
risk that
wstrzymywania
contracts
kontraktu i
and
całkowitego
orders
wycofania?
will be put on hold for this
Nie,
reason?
znaczy
Well, the
z
first
pierwszej część
question, yes.
tak,
The
a
second,
druga
no.
część nie. Bo to jest
Actually,
tak, że jak nie
if you
wiem,
don't
co
know what
zamawiać,
to
to nie
order,
znaczy w ogóle nic nie
you still
zamawiać.
have to
Zawsze
order
jakoś muszę
something.
zamówić. Software ma
So
to do siebie, że zbyt
you
długo
cannot
może można
wait too
czekać,
long with software
albo
to
robić, albo coś nowego
upgrade it or
wprowadzić. To jest
to
konkurencja,
replace
zmiany
it.
w
You
prawie,
have a lot of
bardzo
competition to
dużo rzeczy, które
face.
sprawiają, że
Law
produkt
keeps
może
changing,
nie
so
jest na
demand
tyle
remains quite stable.
stabilny. To nie jest tak, że jeżeli nie zamówię AI, to nic nie zamówię.
Even if you don't
I o tym
order
mowa.
AI, you still have to order something.
Natomiast
But
jeżeli
if you
zamówię
order
AI, to
AI, you
zazwyczaj
usually
zamawiam go na początku
start by
trochę,
buying a little to
patrzę,
see
co on
how
mi
it works for
ułatwi,
you,
to
whether
znaczy
it's good or
wtedy,
not.
i tutaj też to sprawia
That
wtedy
slows down the
pewność.
adoption too.
Natomiast jeżeli pytanie
But if you're
dotyczy
asking
naszych
about demand
stosunkowo
for our
klientów,
cases,
no to jest jakiś
well,
pewien
there's a
rodzaj
certain level of
założeń, że
demand,
sytuacja gospodarcza,
assuming a stable
makroekonomiczna i globalna
economic,
utrzymuje się na
macroeconomic, and
pewnym
global
szacownym poziomie.
situation.
On już
That's
jakby
quite stable.
on jest jakby stały. I teraz ciągle jeszcze mamy takie
And we still deal with consequences of the pandemic
Tak? Bo to kilka lat temu
from several
wiele
years ago.
firm
Many companies hired a lot of
zlikwidowało te
people.
wcześniejsze
They had
inkubatorki.
to, well, many companies had to digitize, and so many companies are still suffering with their revenue dropping because they were making a lot of money in the pandemic and now it's much less. So there was a peak. Now we are back to the good old stable demand in IT. But there's a new peak coming forward, which is not discussed extensively, but for companies like us, it doesn't really work. If we were chip producers, maybe more. But there's a new expectation that AI will be the new hype driving us forward. But the uptake is slower. It's a process. It's not like the pandemic with something happening overnight. It's going to be a flatter curve. But there is a stable level of demand for our service, which remains unchanged. It has been stable for many years. Software houses, how many people did they employ before the pandemic? They are now, the headcount is now bigger than before the pandemic, so demand is quite stable.
Panie prezesie, pytanie do
Do we
zarządu.
have 10 minutes left? Quarter of an hour, because we have
Teraz
some more questions coming.
wysłuchały teraz.
Well, if you're asking questions, we'll be happy to take them. Great.
No świetnie.
Michał
Chciałem tylko
Stopka
zapytać,
is
czy
asking.
właściwie słyszymy o
We've
ograniczeniach
heard
tego
about
typu
limitations on
spowodowanych
AI
dostępem do źródeł energii
due
w
to
skali
energy
energetycznej.
prices and
Czy to
access to
jest
energy. Is that a risk for you?
Well,
Well, that question should go to the energy sector. Can they generate more power? We actually do have Codibly in our group. They specialize in solutions that help. So I'm very optimistic about the future of Codibly. One more question from
Pytanie pana
Michał.
Michała. Czy może pan opisać,
Could you
jak
tell us
przebiega
how
proces rozmowy z taką
you are
potencjalną
talking to
spółką w zakresie
potential
wdrożenia rozwiązań związanych
contractors
ze sztuczną
or
inteligencją? Co jest
clients
największą
who want to
barierą?
implement
Brak wiedzy o
AI?
rynku,
What is the
czy
biggest
niepojęta
obstacle?
cena
The
takiego
lack of knowledge
rozwiązania,
of
czy może
the
brak
client about
pomysłu na
AI, the price
wprowadzenie
of the solution, or
biznesową implementacji takich
no
rozwiązań u
idea
siebie?
how to implement
Jak
an
pan
AI-based
określa
solution
trudności i
in
drogi?
business? I think it's hard to narrow down this very complicated area to a simple factor, a single factor. That would be an oversimplification. As I've said, all these factors are present to a different degree in different companies. Some companies are very aware of AI. They have a strategy and just need someone to implement it. Other companies say, I know nothing about AI. Help me, tell me. Let's talk. Let's spend a few days. Tell me how can I use AI? So the situations differ from company to company. Many factors, the factors I mentioned, are present to a different degree in different companies. I wouldn't like to oversimplify it and say this is how it works every time. That would be too much of a simplification. Adam Zieliński, in the
Trochę w tym
same
kontekście,
vein, let me read out the
dosłownie,
question
żeby nie
verbatim.
przemienić sensu może pytania. W dobie
In the era
rosnącej
of growing
dostępności i kompetencji w
accessibility
zakresie
and
AI u klientów,
competencies
firmy
of AI
konsultujące coraz
with
częściej
clients,
rozwijają
consulting
rozwiązania
companies are now developing
szybkich AI.
tailor-made
Jak stanowić
solutions.
się
How
i
is
wspierać klientów,
Spyrosoft
którzy mimo
expecting to
wzrastających
support
kompetencji
customers who have more
potrzebują
competences
pomocy,
but
aby
still need
przełamać bariery
assistance to
wyjścia z
overcome the
komfortu?
barrier and move out of their zone of comfort? Could you tell me, please, where this question is going? Because I don't really get it.
Ja właśnie chyba też dlatego
This is why I read it out
dosłownie,
verbatim, but I
ale
think
chyba jak
the
rozumiem, panie Adamie,
question,
jeśli możemy prosić o odpowiedź
Adam,
na
you can help us with
piśmie.
it, but
Tak, a w tym
maybe in the
czasie
meantime we
pytanie
have
bardziej
a
chyba
more operational
deklaracyjne.
question.
Pan
Brendan Rohr is
pytał,
asking
czy
whether
spółka
you can
może
tell
wskazać,
us
od ilu klientów
how many
otrzymała
clients
ocenę
have given you
TESM,
official
na jaką może
references
liczyć przy utrzymaniu tych
over the past
kompetencji?
years. Could you share some examples of references?
Tak,
Sebastian?
mam
Yeah, we have a lot of
wiele
references
referencji właśnie
with
związanych z
AI
AI, ale
implementation.
żeby
Could we share them?
powiedzieć,
Probably not.
nie.
Not necessarily
Nie
all,
wszystkie,
but we
ale
do
mamy,
have a lot of
mamy dużo
references
referencji
from our
z
clients.
klientów.
We have references we present on our website. Yeah, you can look at our website. How long we've been working with our biggest clients? Well, some clients we've been working with since the beginning. For example, OS, Ordnance Service. GeoPlace, its subsidiary, has been our partner since the very beginning. Adam follows up on his question, AI adoption in organizations. How are you planning to support customers in the uptake of AI so they can come out of the zone of comfort and enter areas where they haven't used AI so far? I think that's the meaning of the question. Well, we have AI consultants who help clients In Europe, we can assist Polish companies, European companies. We need them, more of them in the US. We're now working with companies that provide such service, but we want to provide the service on our own. So our investment in Caramus is a continuation. We need companies like Caramus that are actively present in the local market to attract AI consultants and support our US customers. We are talking to consultants, and I think they will soon join our ranks. That's one thing. We need AI consultants to talk to clients who are unaware of what they can expect of AI, to assist them, to consult. That's about 4% of our revenue, right? Generating proofs of concept, test solutions, pilot solutions. We are also developing our own IP. We have our own platform to orchestrate agents, as you call it. So we develop agents. We have our proprietary agents, or, well, yeah, we develop them for our clients as well. And for those agents to talk to one another, they need a platform to communicate. That's something we implement for clients. That's how we assist them as well with a ready-to-use solution, out-of-the-box solution. This is one agent does that for you. This is another agent does that for you. And this gives the client a sense of what they can expect. Thank you. There are no more open questions, and so I think we can close our meeting. We are always here for you. You can write us and ask questions during the year. We'll be happy to take any questions of yours. Could we have a quick wrap-up about Q3 and a word about the outlook for Q4? Very briefly, it's good. It's gonna be good. That's our expectation, despite all the turbulences we face. I think we have a very good team. We are well diversified. Due to the economic and overall situation, we are walking a tightrope, but I think we have demonstrated and will continue to demonstrate that we know how to walk the walk.